Well, guys, it's seed starting season again, and we asked you to ask us your burning questions as far as how to get seeds started, Jacques, or should I say Jack?
Don't tell me about my alter ego here. Come on.
Well, I asked you to ask me and refer to me as Eric because you know my alter ego, Eric, really takes a lot of the credit around here. So
True.
we got into it. Why don't we kick it off, Jacques? Our first question, Mr. Eric Gardening, please explain heat mat usage as it relates to starting seeds, temperature ranges, duration on a heat mat, and what seeds need heat, etc.
Okay.
We could have a heat mat under here, and as you will tell us, Jacques, we should.
Yeah, absolutely. Heat mats, game changer when it comes to germination rate. And it's usually for like the things that really want to grow in summer. Tomatoes, eggplants, peppers are a big one. And the difference is dramatic. Like in a regular house or so, it might hit like 60-ish degrees if you're lucky. If you put a heat mat, it'll get up into the 70s, and a tomato can germinate in like 6 days instead of like 14 plus without a heat mat. Peppers, even longer. It's crazy how much of a difference a heat mat makes. The only thing I'll say is that once you have germination, like these little peppers here, that's the time where I like to take it off the heat mat. It doesn't need heat anymore. It's just to get that seed to germinate.
Yeah, and it makes such a big difference, and they're really not very expensive. And if you want one, well, we've got it. We have a heat mat, we have our trays, we have our lights, we have the whole seed starting system. This is an interesting question. Why must seeds be started in a small plug or tray instead of a 3 to 4 inch pot from the start? This way I can actually avoid constant potting up until it's bigger and save extra work before my climate allows for garden planting. It's a very good question because if you think about it from the seed's perspective, why would that seed need to be in a small tray? It wouldn't, because of course in the wild it would just be like on the ground in the world's biggest pot of all time. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't need it. That's the answer. The reason why we do this is mostly for space and resource. So if you look again at these peppers that we have germinating here, we've got a few up, a few not, but there's 16 individual pepper plants in our 16 cell tray. And it's really that the plant doesn't need more than that. Whereas, yeah, if you were to go to the 3 inch, which I think is a fantastic pot for peppers, as a pot up.
Yes.
It depends on how many you're growing. If you're growing like 3 to 4 peppers for the season, I actually don't see a big problem starting them in something like this.
Yeah, my biggest thing with it is that when you start something like a pepper that's a small seed that doesn't grow that quickly, in this, it's gonna be really hard to not overwater it.
Yes.
And you're probably going to end up killing your seedling. And every time you water it, the nutrients wash away. So potting up gives that like plant a little boost, and it just makes your life easier in watering. You're just not gonna kill it.
I would say the watering is probably the reason why you don't do it, because to be honest, you'd be watering so much soil
For a tiny seed up here.
for a taproot that's maybe a half an inch long and only one root. It's a little bit wasteful. But again, you don't have to do it this way. It's just a more efficient space and resource way to start seeds. Eric, what are the best ways to combat seed starting plant care burnout? It's always so fun in the beginning, but eventually becomes overwhelming, especially when scaling back isn't an option. I'm curious why that is. I find myself chanting, "You're doing this for future you." It gets me through, if nothing else, zone 2B.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay, so that is a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
Because you have a true short season, and you have to get your plants ready. If you don't get them ready early enough, you're probably not gonna have enough time to grow them outside.
2B has gotta be a 3-month season.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know how I could actually make that more exciting for them, if there's some sort of gamified way to pot up your seedlings or something. But it is just waiting for that spring harvest, knowing that in summer you're gonna be picking tomatoes from your garden. That's what keeps you going and keeps me excited. And it just makes it worth it, because it's hard to find exactly what you want at the nursery anyway.
You know, there may be ways that you can make your seed starting more efficient as well.
That's true.
Like when we didn't have our 16 cell trays, we would of course start them in our 6 cells, like our peppers and tomatoes. And then it is a little bit more cumbersome because in seasons where I was growing 60 peppers, that'd be a lot of 6 cells. So like maybe figuring out a more efficient way to approach the seed starting, kind of auditing your techniques and seeing if there's a cleaner, more time effective way to do it could be good. But otherwise in 2B, I mean, just keep thinking about that season.
Hats off to it.
Yeah, that's impressive. Next question. For 2 years in a row, all my peppers make it to 1 to 2 inches tall, then they die from damping off disease. I've tried so many things to fix whatever's going wrong. I'm hoping that growing just peppers upstairs will help, since it will be warmer than my basement. And I have your Epic grow light now, so I'll have a spot in addition to my basement shelf setup. It's a nice light, I will say. It's not gonna necessarily prevent damping off, but there are some things that will.
Yeah, I think that's one of those where maybe you have too big of a container. Like we talked about earlier, if there's too much water, you're more likely to get that disease. But honestly, the biggest thing you could do is just get a fan.
Yeah.
The fan is going to keep the surface of your soil dry, which is where that, I think it's, what is it, like a fungal disease, I believe, technically. And then if the surface is dry, it won't be able to live there and it won't be able to pinch that stem of your actual pepper seedling. So that's probably the easiest, low-tech, most guaranteed way to stop that.
Yeah, I would say other people will say sterilize your seedling mix. At least here, we're not as big a fan of it because straight up, it's going to go into an unsterile, very active environment after that. There are probably some sprays, like maybe you could hit it with like a copper fungicide, but we don't really use that here at Epic. But I think honestly, the fan is good, and it's gonna make the seedling stronger as well.
Dilute peroxide, maybe.
Maybe. All right, our next one. For shallow sown seeds like lettuce or parsley that need light to germinate, should I then be burying the roots when they emerge upside down on the soil's surface? So, I mean, technically, I guess the answer would be yes. But when someone says surface sown, they don't necessarily just mean literally sprinkled on the surface with no adhesion to the soil at all. So something that we'll do, of course, when you have your seed starting mix, Jacques, you'll have it be a slightly moistened mix.
Yes.
When you put it in the tray, you'll compact it a touch, which means that once that seed hits it, and then you perhaps even tamp that a little bit, that water in the soil will sort of stick it to the soil, which means that you really shouldn't get a whole lot just sprouting up into the air.
Yeah, at first I was confused, but now I realize that if it's literally just sitting on the surface, the root's a little bit lost.
It won't have a clue where to go.
Yeah.
Now, something you could do instead of having to flip it upside down is once you get the germ, just cover it with a little bit more soil. Then it's buried.
Yeah, and honestly, a little bit of soil on top is enough to let some light through. If you're worried, you could use vermiculite, which will keep the seeds wet, but also allow light through, no problem.
And I'll be honest, like lettuce, I've covered it before.
I cover it all the time.
It's germinated. So I haven't had a huge problem with that. But yeah, just put a little extra soil on top. Can you talk about seed starting for flowers or natives for a pollinator garden? I'll give this one to you, Jacques, because you just put in a native garden.
Yeah, so with those, most of the seeds just take time. Now, of course, there's like specialty things that like need smoke, but if they do, then it should say it on the packet. For the most part, what I do with the pollinator garden is I will rake an area, kind of roughen up the soil a little bit, create little furrows with the rake. I water that, then I scatter the seeds into all of those little crevices and nooks that I made with the rake. And sometimes I'll throw a little bit more soil on top just to make sure the seeds are at least slightly covered and water it, and that's it. But I think making sure that the soil is fully well watered at the beginning and roughing it up to create little ridges and like nooks and crannies for the seeds to fall into. Those are the biggest things that I've found to make like a good, not just like pollinator garden, but one that isn't just like all smushed into one area, because when you water it, the seeds could collect, but it'll look like a nice, lush, full pollinator garden.
Yeah, and then the cool part too about the natives is if it takes them a month or two to germinate, it doesn't really matter, because if they are true natives, they will sort of just sprout when the environment allows them to.
Yeah, just make sure you do it in the right season, and that's usually spring or fall.
Next question. Hey, Eric. You know, every time you guys call me Eric, it hurts me, and for Eric, he really loves it.
I think this time you asked him to.
I asked for it. I've noticed that a lot of my seedlings have been falling down or bending over, even though I keep the light right over them, and I don't think that I'm overwatering. I really don't know what to do. Now, of course, with seed starting, it could be a bunch of different factors, but if I'm hearing that the light's right over them, I'm not overwatering, my only thing I can think of is maybe the light's just not powerful enough. That's where my brain's going.
Oh, I was just assuming whenever I see a seedling falling over, I just go straight to damping off.
I mean, that could be a problem, for sure. But if we're talking like falling over, like bending or like stretching, that's a light problem, which means that like, you know, this light could be at this
That's fair.
height, but look how much brighter it could be, right? This one has 4 settings on it. I would be running it on this one, of course. I wouldn't be running it on the lowest one, but it's just easier to see on this video for you guys. So that would be one thing I would think of. Another thing I might think of is what you had mentioned for damping off is that air will thicken up the stalks and help them stand a little straighter. It's a good point, Jacques. If there is true damping off, you'd look for the very base of the stem where it's touching the soil, maybe a 1/4 inch higher, and you'd start to see it thin out and it'd be falling.
Yeah, it looks like somebody like pinched it right at the base.
And so those would be the 3 things I would think about. My guess is probably the lighting, but you make a good point with the damping off.
Yeah, and the fan helps with the strengthening and the damping off.
Yeah. Now, this is a great question. My seedlings almost never grow beyond the start of their first true leaves or no more than an inch tall. I've used sifted potting mix, seed starting mix, humidity domes, a fan. Good point on the fan. I use light diluted fertilizer when I see the true leaves form. I only water once the top of the soil has dried out a bit, but the seedlings never get bigger. Why? Sometimes they're in there for months with no growth beyond 1 inch, and I'm using my local almanac and recommended seed starting times for my zone. So this person has given us everything they've done. What do you think?
So they checked off all the first things I would have said.
Right.
Like, oh, obviously
that's why they said them.
Obviously it's
That's
that.
why they said them, yeah.
But here's my guess, is that you started your seeds inside, and then when they germinated, you brought them outside and didn't harden them off properly. Because what could happen if you don't harden off a seedling right, is that they will literally just stun lock. Like they will just sit there, they won't do anything, they'll stay alive, but they won't grow no matter what you do. And generally that goes away at least after like a week or maybe 2.
Generally, but I've had, earlier in my gardening journey, I have had this exact scenario where they just sit there and you're like, well, you're not dead, but you're not thriving either. And then when I look at the roots, it's a root problem. The roots did not have the ability to deliver nutrients up to the plants. So it probably means at some point in the development up until that 1 inch part, I would be very curious if you were to dig out the roots and look at the structure of the roots, you might find that there's basically none or they're damaged in some fashion. Anytime I've had that stunted where I'm like, I think I've done everything right. The roots are somehow messed up. And of course you can avoid that in a variety of different ways. Most of the time, I think it's overwatering too early. The roots get sort of suffocated in the water. There's not enough oxygen. They don't develop properly. And then the plant's basically on life support. That's my best prediction.
I like that. And to further that one, which I think is a great possibility, is that when you do look at the roots, if they look brown instead of like white, it's probably because you're overwatering it. And what Kevin said, they're not getting any oxygen.
Yeah, this is a great question. Should we really throw out old seeds, last year's, or is there a way to verify their germination? So first of all, no, you should not throw out last year's seeds. I don't know where we were saying that. What happens is, well, we own a seed company, right? Botanical Interests, these beautiful seeds. Our seeds and anyone else who sells seeds, especially in the USA, you cannot sell a seed after the year that it says on the packet. It's literally not legal. Now, does that mean that those seeds are non-viable? No. No, it doesn't. And of course, it depends on the variety, Jacques. You know, when you think about something like a soybean,
very volatile.
They're very volatile. Like even after 6 months, your germination rate starts to drop on soybean. Of course, something like a lettuce or a bean, you know, it's going to last quite a while. So don't throw your old seed packs away. All that happens is the germination just starts to slowly fall off, which is what your next question is asking, is how do you verify it? And there's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the most common is the wet paper towel test. You just take like, let's say 10 seeds, get a damp paper towel, put the seeds in, close it, put it in a Ziploc bag. When they do germinate, if they do, you just count how many of them did. So if 5 of 10 germinated, 50% of your seeds should germinate. So whenever I have an old seed packet, I honestly never do a germination test. The only thing I do instead is I just put way more seeds than I actually need. So instead of like 2 seeds per cell, I might put like 4 to 6 seeds and just hope that one of them makes it. And that's kind of the easiest way, and then you don't have to throw away your seeds.
Don't even have to germination test.
No.
Yeah, but don't throw away your old seed.
No, there's no point in that.
This is an interesting question. If I'm providing enough nutrients by way of great soil and fertilizer, theoretically, how long can I keep seedlings in my 2-inch pots? I start them in seed trays, and I usually pot them up into much larger pots to keep them happy until I can take them outside. By the way, I'm talking about peppers specifically right now.
Okay.
I've moved since my last seed starting season, and I no longer have the room to pot them up. But I can't take them outside because it's too cold right now. So how long can I keep them in a 2-inch pot? I've seen a pepper grower specifically, Jacques, grow peppers in plugs this small, but across a whole 10-20
like
tray.
128.
128, something like that. And these peppers, I'm talking, would be what you might see at a 6-pack at a nursery size. Now, the thing to think about is when you're growing in a seed starting setup, for the first couple weeks, they're really just living off of the nutrition within the seed.
Absolutely.
After that, they are deriving nutrition from the soil. After that, though, if you don't pot them up, in my opinion, coming from my background, you're effectively growing them in a hydroponic media because the soil has now been depleted and you're really just refilling it with liquid fertilizer and water. So theoretically, you could grow them in a little plug for, I would say about 2 months. Now, the sacrifice there is
the roots.
Yeah.
At some point, there's not going to be enough space for the roots. It'll get root bound. It'll literally consume all of the soil, and you'll be left with just roots and perlite. So I would say like just keep doing it until you get to a point where you pull your seedling out and all you see is roots. At that point, it's probably going to struggle when you actually transplant it into your garden. But as long as you are providing it the nutrition, you can let that thing ride for quite a while.
Yeah.
And some people will even grow peppers. There was like that soda can challenge where you basically just grow peppers to full maturity in a soda can. So it is possible.
It's definitely possible. Next question, Eric, exclamation mark. Should pumpkins or squash be seeded directly in place or should they be transplanted? We here at Epic Gardening have some interesting, opinions about this. Is that a squash or is that a cucumber?
I think
it's a squash. It's a butternut. So clearly we've decided we can transplant some squash. What I'll say is if you have the luxury to be able to direct sow a pumpkin or a squash in like a nice mound outdoors in the warmth where it's going to germinate perfectly, I'd opt for it.
Yeah.
Because that's where the plant's going to be. But a lot of us don't. I mean, even here, we're going to get a couple weeks head start doing it this way.
Yep.
And at least with our tray system, you can pop it out and you don't destroy the roots at all. But there's nothing wrong with transplanting pumpkins. We've done it almost every year.
Yeah, the only reason I really transplant is because I have commitment issues in my garden. Where I'm like, I don't want to commit to this is going to be the place where my pumpkins are. So if I start them in pots, it buys me a little bit of extra time. But if I knew for sure I wanted it there, I would just direct seed it.
How do you guys deal with salt? Tap water has a lot of salt and eventually the soil kills seedlings. I think there's a bit of a misconception within the question because there's not sodium chloride in tap water.
At least shouldn't be in most tap water.
Let's hope not. There are mineral salts though, like you have calcium.
A lot of calcium here.
Magnesium, yeah. So it doesn't, I mean, in my opinion, it does not kill the seedlings.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. What it will do is it will leave like sort of crusty buildups. And actually on some of our trays, you can probably even see it if you hunt around.
Yeah, like that stuff.
It'll sort of build up sometimes. We just have really hard water here in San Diego. I honestly don't have any issues starting seeds with tap water. If you really do want to dechlorinate it, then you can just leave it out in a bucket and do that. Or if you're really worried about it, I guess you could throw it through a filter, but I've literally never had a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you could get like one of those screw-on hose filters that they use for like RVs. I think they're like $20. And if you're that concerned, it'll probably filter out a decent amount of the salts.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it is truly salt water, they're going to struggle in these tiny cells because there's just not that much soil.
Well, these aren't saltwater plants. I mean, straight up. That's just, that's what's, if you have true salt in your tap water, please call your local municipality because something has gone wrong. Okay, next question. What are some examples of quality grow lights that I can purchase from a hardware store that don't need to be attached to the wall? I've had the hardest time trying to find one that I can hang on a chain and meet the grow light specifications for ideal indoor growing. Appreciate the help. So, I mean, back in the day, I just used Home Depot's T5 shop lights.
Yeah.
They're fluorescents. They can come in like 2x2, 2x4, 3x6, whatever. And you can hang those from chains that you would screw with like an eye hook into the ceiling. Those, I would say most of the time, have the output that a seedling needs. Of course, there are grow lights you can buy. Now, we actually did just come out with our newest grow light. We have a couple on our store. This is our white one with legs. It fits a 1020 tray and it has 5 different lighting modes. So we have it on a low one here. I'll just go to the brightest, 2, 3, 4, 5, dimmest, and then of course it can be turned on, it can be turned off, and it can be run from 8, 12, or 16 hours with a simple click. The coolest part, I think, Jacques, is if you run it at max, you're gonna get good germination, you're gonna get good growth, and then, let's go all the way up here.
Yeah, you can just keep potting up.
Yeah, as the plant grows, it goes pretty darn high. So it's not at a hardware store, but it's our Epic white grow light with legs, and if it's a 1020 tray, you can grab that on our store. Kind of a fun one here. What do you do if you plant too many seeds and have nowhere to plant all the seedlings? I feel bad throwing them in my compost. We do this every year. So some of them you plant as backups, and you're like, okay, well, I don't really need that one. I'll give it to my hens or whatever it is. But a lot of the time, just give it to your family and friends.
Yeah, honestly, that's been the thing that I've leaned on the most, except I keep potting up also forever, even though I have no intentions of using them. But generally, whenever somebody comes over, I'm like, hey, do you want 4-pack of peppers or maybe tomatoes or maybe both or maybe 3.
Yeah.
And that's usually what I do. But yeah, a lot of them do end up in the compost eventually.
I want to know if or when to prune seedlings to make them branch more. I feel like nobody touches on this, and I wonder because my plants tend to just grow as one stalk straight up. Do nurseries or gardening stores just sell bushy looking plants because they plant a handful of seeds and let them go, or what? Actually, a very astute question. So the answer is, first of all, it really does depend on the plant variety.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're totally right. When you go to a nursery and you look at, let's say, a basil, you're looking at sometimes upwards of a dozen basil plants growing out of one pot. That makes it look bushier, and it's really a shelf appeal thing that a nursery will do, or really the grower will do, to make you pick it up. Now, of course, if you were to plant 12 basil in one hole,
Not ideal.
it's not ideal. Would you prune any of your seedlings, even at this stage, Jacques?
At this stage, no, but once they're potted up and like, let's say they have like 6 true leaves, I might consider it for like small peppers, like anything that's a small fruited pepper, I would do it because you tend to get more, or maybe like a zinnia at the beginning. It's up to you really. You
Basil,
can do
maybe
that.
you would
Yeah,
do
basil
it.
actually you would.
Yeah.
Once it's mature enough and isn't surrounded by 12.
Yeah, there's all sorts of plants though that you would literally never prune. Like you would never do this to a bean, a pea,
Yeah.
a squash, any cucurbit plant, cucumber, squash, pumpkin, etc. Lettuce, there would be no reason to prune
Yeah,
any
that'd
sort
be
of
rough.
any greens. So I would say most of the time, no. The only ones I would recommend is the ones that you already did. It's maybe pepper, maybe tomato.
Yeah.
Just about every seed says to sow outdoors after danger of frost. Are there any seeds that can be sown early while the ground is still cold?
Yes. Do I know them all off the top of my head? Here in San Diego, unfortunately, not. Now, the main thing is with these kinds of seeds is that some people will scatter these seeds in like fall before you get the snow accumulation. This could be a lot of different flowers that actually need cold stratification, like even echinacea is one that comes to mind. And you can scatter before then, and the seeds will just sit there because they know that once spring comes and it gets warm and the ice melts, they will just germinate. But it is hard to actually do it when the ground is still frozen.
Another thing you can do is something called winter sowing, where really almost any seed at that point can then be started in the cold because you're basically providing a cold buffer or insular buffer. And it's really just like a milk jug or something like that. So you could do, I mean, I've seen people do peppers, tomatoes that way.
Yeah.
When there's still technically frost or
chance
snow
of
on the
it,
ground.
yeah.
It's just that the thing that they're in doesn't have frost.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then of course it's not going to start. Good question here. How long do you give seeds that haven't germinated or sprouted before deeming them a failure and trying again? For me, it's if it's at or beyond the estimated germination time on the packet. So let's just take this spinach, for example. This is Bloomsdale spinach. Days to emerge, 5 to 10 days. If I'm sitting at 15, I did something wrong or the seed's not viable. So I just go by the estimated germination time per variety.
Yeah, plus like 50%. I've had a pepper seed that was extremely old and it took like a month to germinate, but that's not normal.
Yeah.
It's better to just walk away.
Yeah, just start another one. All right, our next question, serious question here.
Oh, okay.
I thought Eric was RIP. You know, and you're not wrong. A couple years ago, we did have to compost Eric.
He was buried.
But when I'm here at night, late at night, just by myself, you're not even here, Jacques, I hear him whisper. And that's why I think he's still around. I hear him whisper, "You tried to bury me. You forgot I was a seed."
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I think Eric may resurrect this season. And I think you guys calling me, Kevin, Eric, all the time,
He probably hears it.
I think he hears it. And I think he's coming back. Speaking of Eric, would hilling help for direct sowing seeds of plants that don't like overly wet soil? I have lots of rain in the spring. Sure. Yeah, to some degree, yeah. I mean, you hill off, you know, pumpkins or squash or cucumbers, not necessarily for that reason, but yeah, if you have tons of rain, sure. It also might protect them from washing out.
Yeah, it's a classic thing that we actually will recommend for things like citrus trees that don't want to sit in wet soil is you build up a little mound, plant it a little bit higher. That way there's some amount of the roots that sit above the ground level and it shouldn't drown. So yeah, totally reasonable. That's why raised beds work so well.
Yeah. When or should I even cut seedlings down that aren't growing as well if I planted about 5 seeds of, let's say, lettuce and greens and they all germinate in the same cell? So this is pretty classic. It's just thinning seedlings, Jacques.
Yeah, you have basically 2 options. You could cut them out, or if you're like me and you never want to walk away, you'll take them out, carefully separate them and repot each individual seedling.
No, don't
but
do
no. Instead, when you either at the time of planting or as soon as you know that you have a good one, just go in there with little snips and trim out those extras.
Yeah.
And the one that's left is all of a sudden going to have a big growth spurt.
Yeah, and it's important to trim. Do not pull.
Yeah.
Because what you'll do is you'll pull
Exactly.
the root system out of all the seedlings, and then
pull
you'll
the
be
whole thing.
You'll be very sad if that
I've
happens.
done that.
Okay, Eric, how do I get over my reservations of starting seeds in the first place? I'm scared to start them early, procrastinate terribly, and I'm very stingy with seeds. They feel far too precious, and I buy more all the time only to have them sit and age. It's like buying books versus reading books dilemma. Man, this is almost a psychological
Yeah.
issue. You know, this is something every gardener has a thing in the garden they're afraid to do. I think, dare I say it, I think for Jacques, it's pruning. You get scared specifically of fruit tree pruning. Like it feels too permanent for you, perhaps.
I've gotten over it lately, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you just have to do it.
You just have to do
I
it.
keep doing it and now I've convinced
Yeah.
myself it's part of the process. I'd say like the easiest way is like if you are intimidated by seed starting in trays is just start by seed starting outside. Direct sowing is like the lowest friction way to get started with seed starting. And then from there, you're gonna get addicted and you're going to really get curious about starting in trays.
Yeah, and I think too, like, seeds truly are a precious commodity on this earth. I mean, that's there's no doubt about that. But when you compare the price of the seed to
yeah.
like the things you buy without a second thought, a morning coffee, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially these days, like you get a little cortado and it's like $6.99, and this is $3.49, and it will grow you more spinach than you could ever want. So there's definitely a level of reverence to have for the seed itself as an idea.
Yeah.
But these seeds, you feel free to experiment with them. That's the point. If they're sitting in the packet for the rest of their life, then you're not respecting the seed. Great question here. How densely do you pack the potting soil in either a starter pot or cell tray when you're starting seeds? Well, to me, a thing you really do wrong at the start is just you don't pack it at all.
Yeah.
Because what you'll do is you'll just put this soil sort of over the cells and rub it flat until it kind of just comes to the surface, and then you just sow immediately. But if you were to tap that,
Oh, yeah.
it would drop about a third. And what that means is that the seed basically won't adhere to the soil because it's too loose, it's too friable.
Might even be in an air pocket and never even germinate. I
Exactly.
agree. I think you shouldn't like smash it. You should give it a compression to make sure it's fully filled the entire tray. But any more than that, you might over compact it and that could also be a problem for roots. But yeah.
Something we'll do if you are using seed trays that are uniform is, I'm not gonna do it because I'll smash these, but you can basically put one over the other
There you
and
go.
press it down. Yeah, so you can just do this. Boom, press that down a little bit and it auto compresses, and because there's bottom holes, it actually creates a little like target for you to put the seedling on. All right, Jacques, this question we've gotten maybe for the last 5 years.
Too many times? Like,
In my opinion, too many times.
Okay.
And it is just wondering if you two are a couple.
no, just a couple of friends.
Just a couple of friends
Who like to garden.
Just a couple guys who like to garden. No, this is, I understand it because we're on the channel all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And for whatever reason in our society, it would be deemed weird, I guess, for two straight guys to garden. I don't think that's that weird.
Two
To
guys
me?
could go down in the basement and play pool together. That's fine. But if you're gardening, outside, all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's going on?
You're going out, you're staying out late with your boys, going down dark alleys, playing with balls.
We're just
But
out here gardening.
I'm just out here gardening. So look, no, we are both straight men, but we're good friends.
Yes,
We're good friends.
absolutely.
And you know, if in the fanfic that we all have of our fellow creators, if you need to believe that, look,
doesn't bother me
I'll
either.
read the story, I guess. I'll read the story. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. If you have more seed starting questions, of course, drop them down in the comments. This entire seed starting setup, the 1020 tray, the 16 cells, 6 cells, 4 cells, and the light and the heat mat is available on our site at shop.epicgardening.com, to say nothing of all the seeds. We'll see you next time. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.